God morgen alle sammen. Utrolig flott at så mange har tatt seg turen til å bli med oss i Nekas digitale morgenkaffe. Det her har vi virkelig gledet oss til. Mitt navn er Eva Helene Ronskog. Jeg er prosjektleder i Neka. Og i dag så skal vi ha en spennende morgenkaffe sammen med en fantastisk dame og god venn, Eli Turander. Hun er engelsk, så her blir det britisk, så det må vi bare få børste av oss språkstøvet og joine inn. Og vi skal snakke om viktigheten av god kommunikasjon, både for å posisjonere industri- og teknologiselskaper, men også for å attrahere arbeidskraft og synliggjøre verdier og bærekraftsinitiativ. Det er noe som er ekstremt viktig for at et selskap skal holde seg relevant og være konkurransedyktig i årene som kommer. So, good morning, Eli.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's
yeah, brilliant.
Nice
so, Eli, tell us a bit about yourself. Obviously, we've had a very short introduction, but I'd like for you to just bring us through your, your experience and who you are and where you work, etc.
Sure. So, as you said, I'm British. I started my career working in strategic communications in London, working with a lot of big multinational companies. For example, Unilever, the FMCG company that's behind a lot of the household brands that you probably use every day. Manpower Group, the global recruitment company. And then I moved 11 years ago now to Norway with my Swedish husband, and I was fortunate to get a role at DNV. So I was there for about 5 years doing a number of communication roles, internal, digital, media. And then I joined Aker Solutions as VP of Communications. So I was there in a kind of tumultuous time through COVID, the low oil price, etc. And then now, most recently, I'm at Hexagon Purus where I'm Global Communication Director. So I've been working with, I guess, industrial companies now for over a decade. Yeah.
Right, fantastic. I just heard the news that, and congratulations, by the way, that Hexagon Purus has successfully raised another 1 billion in capital.
Yeah,
wow.
very excited, very thrilled about that. I mean, it's a very tough market, capital market. So we're all very thrilled.
Very excited. Well done. So Eli, why do you think it's important to prioritize communications and including the sustainability topics? Why is that of importance to industrial companies and tech companies in general?
I think that especially for many smaller companies, they're kind of so focused on their daily operations that communications can sometimes end up taking a bit of a backseat, and somehow it becomes secondary to all the other demands. But I think that really has to change, because external audiences, including potential employees, are going to have either no awareness of you, or they may have completely the wrong perception of you. And, they're going to have an impression of you regardless. So you can either manage that and take control of that, or you're just being passive, really. So, and I think there's a bit of an attitude shift around the sustainability topic, where it used to be a kind of a nice to have, and, frankly, something that's a bit of a hassle. But now, sustainability really is a differentiator for many companies, and it's something you have to be competitive. And if you're not focusing on that, you won't be competitive. People won't want to work for you. Customers won't want to come to you because you're not contributing to their sustainability targets. And especially the Gen Zers won't be interested in working for you. So, it's super important to tell your stakeholders who you are, why you exist, and what you stand for, really. Yeah.
And so this has many aspects. So you were tapping into both Generation Z, the values that they have, and also throughout the entire value chain of reporting from customer to suppliers, so that they will also look at your company to see if you are delivering or if you are engaging in sustainability. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so where do you think the threshold is? Let's say you're a because you come from a big company, right? But what about when we see these small SMBs? What's the threshold for starting on telling people, the world externally about their sustainability initiatives?
I mean, I think it should be very low threshold, right? It's, you can start small, and if you're one of the smaller companies, just get started really telling, even the small things that you're doing, whether that's sort of community related or, sort of more environmentally related. There is, so many opportunities to tell those stories on social media, for example. So I think it's important just to get started, really.
Yeah. Okay, good. And as you've been working in Aker Solutions, which is it's one of our members as well in Neke, do you have any examples of what you did in Aker Solutions while you were there?
Yeah, sure. So Aker Solutions is obviously a large company. I think it's about 16,000 employees, and historically it's been a supplier to the oil and gas industry. And when I joined, as I said, it was quite a tumultuous time because soon after I think it was 2020, we had the sort of double whammy of COVID and low oil price. And a lot of employees were permitted, and there was quite a low trust, I would say, in the organization. But in July of that year, Aker merged with Kværner and officially became one company again. And then there was a kind of a new focus on sustainable energy production, and Aker Solutions wanted to take a position as an accelerator for renewables. So we needed to rebuild trust. We needed to reposition the company, and this was super important because, with everything that had happened in the industry, it was we needed new talent. It was a very competitive job market, and graduates coming from NTNU, the cream of the crop, were not really attracted to working in oil and gas, and it didn't look like a very stable industry at that time. And I think there were a lot of other exciting jobs, working with technology and digitalization. So we really had to make sure that we were attracting, the best talent. So we needed to reposition the company and as a kind of broader energy supplier. And at the same time, we had a new strategy and strategic goal to derive I think it was 2/3 of revenue from renewables and low carbon energy solutions by 2030. So yeah. So there was a lot to do, and we developed something called the Power the Change campaign, which was a kind of a communication platform to establish Aker as a driver of sustainable solutions. And a part of this, when we were developing this campaign, we were doing some kind of research looking at how to reach the Gen Z. And we saw that they are obviously the most engaged in the sustainability debate, and also at the same time the most opposed to kind of the oil and gas industry. So we really needed a campaign that would be seen as kind of credible and relevant to them. So as part of this, we developed a brand film, and you can still see it on YouTube actually. And the narrative was delivered through a slam poet, a British artist called Sophia Thacker, and her message was about, oil and gas has been part of the problem, but now we're trying to be part of the solution. And it was about, how do we build on the legacy and on all the knowledge from oil and gas, and then now apply that to kind of the biggest challenge of the day. So, trying not to lose credibility, not to be greenwashing, showing that we were serious about the green shift. And I think, the Power the Change slogan, it sort of takes care of the history, but also shows that the company is kind of ready for action. So,
yeah.
And the message in the film is all about, daring to think big, trying to tackle, obviously climate change, being part of the solution. And it really embodied the values that we were looking for in the kind of people that we wanted to recruit. And I think it was a very successful campaign. I saw that Aker Solutions was ranked last year as the second most attractive employer by Engineering computer sciences, science students. So I think, I think it did work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's shifting the focus to the values of that the Generation Z have, which is what's the Generation Z? What's the definition of that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think it's they are born 1997 to 2012. Yeah. So they're the first kind of fully digital generation, if you like. Yeah.
So you saw that when you shifted focus on attracting them and adapting their values and what's important for them, then that ultimately changed or was one of the driving forces for Aker Solutions in how you managed to do the change. Yeah.
So the campaign was very much focused on them and trying to appeal to their interests and concerns, really.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting, actually. I think a lot of people or a lot of companies have a lot to learn on the importance of attracting what they need to do in order to attract that Generation Z, and the difference between values and mindset. Obviously, it's a very different world today than it was in the 1980s, and 2000s. So I think that's very important. So now that you're at Hexagon Purus, how are you using communication to strategically there to meet your business objectives, and what do you do in those matters?
Yeah, so Hexagon Purus, and we're delivering hydrogen and battery electric technologies, which are used for mobility applications and decarbonising industry. And we're a much smaller company than Aker Solutions. We're 650 people, and we're a scale up. So we're as you said, we had a capital raise. We're still working to break even. That should be in 2026. So. But at the same time, we still had some of the same challenges that Aker Solutions had, which is around attracting new talent. And we've opened 7 new manufacturing facilities in 18 months on 13 different continents. So,
wow.
Well, I think we've grown our workforce by a factor of 6 in 4 years. So it's huge scale up, growing a global organization. And then, it's a lot of competition for production and office workers, actually. And, some of our manufacturing facilities are kind of, they're in the middle of Germany, basically. And so trying to make sure that you can find the skilled workers is really key. So, we are really focusing on we just developed a new purpose, which is to be a driving force for a more sustainable planet. So, we're trying to really show that we're a purpose-driven company and our role in driving sustainability. And, all our communication really is about connecting to topics around climate change and our role in creating a more sustainable planet. So, but still, still trying to be very balanced in our communication. So, we're not saying that hydrogen is necessarily the right for everything or batteries are right for everything, but it's just one of many solutions in the energy transition. So, and then it's about showing our culture right. It's trying to show who we are, that we're an inclusive organization, what it's like to work in Hexagon Purus, the kind of development and career opportunities there are, And
why do you think that's important to the Generation Z? So if you look at the communications of industry companies a decade ago, and you look at them now, there's a very distinctive difference between the one who succeeds now, who's actually done that shift on communicating on, as you say, the values, the culture of the company, the path of excelling in the company, sustainability and all those things. And why do you think that's important to attract Generation Z?
Yeah, I mean, I think both the message has had to change and also the channels have had to change in a way, because, the Gen Zers, they are very tech savvy, they're socially conscious, they really rely on digital platforms. Most of them get their news from social media. I think it's now like around 70% gets their news from social media. And they have different interests and wants. So, they much prefer user-generated content. The phrase "content is king," it still applies. They like, content from their peers. Really, they would rather, they're more likely to trust something from, an influencer or someone they know rather than a brand or a corporation. So, and they want content that's also informative, that's entertaining, that's visually engaging. So, if you want to reach that kind of audience, you really need to emphasize your mission and your commitment, I think, to sustainability, to diversity, to social responsibility. And then, you can stand out with that audience.
I also had I've had many discussions with or conversations rather with students, and one of the key things that they highlighted, amongst other things, as you just mentioned, was also they are attracted to companies who have humor. There's videos of humor, who don't take themselves too seriously as jokes, and I was a bit surprised by that. And I think that's one of the key takeaways is actually, because their attention span are very short, very limited. So when they see humor, they immediately react to that, and they like a company that has humor. That's an immediate attraction. And that was a bit surprising, but a very good insight.
And I think that sounds kind of quite intimidating for a lot of companies, just think, well, how am I going to make sort of content that is funny, our products, what's funny about that, really, but I think that maybe the word is to be authentic, show as a company, show your personality, and, you don't have to be too serious, but really show the personality of the people who are working there, because, it's just so much more attractive for that generation.
And I think it's what they are looking for is honesty. And they don't like greenwashing. You can still say that you work with oil and gas, and that's fine. That you work with fossil fuels, that's fine, as long as you do something good about it. As long as you're part of the change, and you have and you're honest.
And everyone is on a journey, right? And everyone has a different starting point. So I think that is understood. But you have to be honest about these things.
So one of the challenges that we see that the industry has is attracting production workers. We see a lot of in Østfold-regionen as well. There are fagskoler. There are that is closing. There are a lack of the right competence for these industries. How do we, or how do you work on attracting these production workers specifically?
I think we try to focus on communicating around fair compensation, supportive work environment, but I think good benefits, obviously, stability. But I think that production workers are not necessarily that different to Gen Zers, in the sense that everyone wants to feel part of something. It doesn't matter what generation you are. It's about having a sense of belonging, really, and showing that in your communications. And I think it's really important to remember that the employer brand is built from within. So you've got to remember that your current employees are your biggest ambassadors, and they impact much more than people realize. And that's not a quick fix. It takes years. That's the bad news. Working, your own employees are your biggest asset. They should be your biggest asset.
It's interesting, because there are so many specific types of production workers, and there's a lack of right people. So how could these niches, if you may, go about trying to attract these either students or Generation Z or the next generation to keep expanding in the company throughout the next 50 years, without using too much effort. How can they show that my company, even though it's small, even though we're a niche, how could I be attractive to a student or a young adult wanting to get into the work life?
I mean, for me, I think it's all about emphasizing, purpose and impact. And I think a lot of companies, they focus on what do we do and how do we do it, but they don't really connect to the bigger picture. And you might be a company that's making kind of components for the healthcare industry, and how does that product matter? To the outside world, it might just seem like a small component, but you're not just making components. You could be supporting life-saving healthcare. So you need to really connect to the kind of the bigger picture and the bigger story. And you've probably heard ever of Simon Sinek, and he talks about the golden circle. You can, if anyone hasn't heard of it, you can look at it on YouTube or on the internet. But it says, he says that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think so. I think that's the key, really. And I think also, if you're working for one of the small industrial companies, you can really focus on the niche expertise and innovation. And there is definitely an audience for that. I mean, in Hexagon Purus, we put out a video about our composite winding machine. It's literally just a video of a winding machine making one of our cylinders. And that looks maybe a bit nerdy for some, but it got massive engagement, because for the people who are kind of interested in that they love that kind of content. So I think not everything has to be super polished or entertaining. There's also a place for really showing your technology, for the people who are interested in that.
So would you advise for these companies listening in, or for those who hasn't implemented this type of communication, that they could do both? They need to focus on the product and the niche, to get the right competence, really, and to engage and continue to increase that level of skills, but also focus on the big why.
You're doing
it.
You have to do both, basically. You can show the what we do and the niche part and appeal to the sort of engineers or the production workers, but then you also have to answer the why. So it's both. You have to put it in context, really.
Okay,
and then I think it's also really important to show the company culture, and that's what do we mean by that? That for us in Hexagon Purus, where if you look on our social media accounts, it might be showing that in our office in Maryland in the States, that they have donuts on a Friday, they know what everyone's favorite donut is. And that's it's just a small thing, but, it does say, it gives you a sense of, what's it like to work in that office, and I know, or we have a photo of, the dogs that are in a reception, our manufacturing facility in Witte in Germany. They have a enormous golden retriever that sort of sits in reception, and it's also the small things, right? And it's surprising what creates engagement sometimes. Like we even had a post about people giving blood at one of our manufacturing facilities, and it's odd, but in a way that some of these posts. But it does say something about your values and how you contribute to society. And over time, that builds an impression, right? So I think I wouldn't underestimate also, the community and the sort of social responsibility type content. We in Hexagon Purus, we have a kind of a rule. We try to have on our social media accounts, we have kind of a third employer branding type content, 1/3 that's more marketing, and then 1/3 that's more corporate. So we try to get that balance.
So I think it's what you're saying, and my experience as well, is just letting people into the insights of those small everyday magics, like waffles on a Friday. or donuts on a Friday. Those tiny, genuine things that you do in the office or you do outside the office, if it's a walk in the park or whatever. Those are the tiny things that you could actually use for or show that this is who we are and this is attractive.
Yeah, it's just giving people a sense of the kind of people they're going to be working with. You know, what does the day-to-day working life look like? What does it feel to work there? What's the vibe of the company? Yeah.
So how can you be, this is a very, hot potato topic, because people talk about greenwashing, etc. But how can you actually be credible when communicating about sustainability?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, I suppose the first thing to say is that the sustainability reporting requirements are, it's got a lot heavier with the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD. So, companies with more than 40 million euro turnover a year or more than 250 employees now have to comply with that directive. And, so that means doing materiality assessments and what's material for your business and, what are the risks, the impacts, what are the opportunities, and, auditors are looking at that. So it is becoming a lot more time consuming. But even if you're not in that group of companies, you still should be thinking about how you communicate around sustainability credibly. And I think it's, everyone is on a journey. So, you need to show the steps that you're taking, but you also need to, you can't just show intentions. You also need to show where the real impact is. And that comes from, sharing concrete data. So I think, it's important to avoid vague statements like we're reducing our carbon footprint, or, you need to be tangible, like what percentage, what practices, and, highlighting specific initiatives. And I think, it doesn't have to be the enormous stuff, just, it can be the small things. I think a lot of companies, they don't think, they don't necessarily think about all the things that they're doing really. And, when you look at the totality, there probably are examples. So, and then I think also looking at the broader community activities as well. But it's a lot of work, and I think if you are making a, having to report on sustainability, you might as well use that content in other channels. But you've got to be nuanced, right? The words matter, and you have to be considered. And I think the rules around greenwashing are getting stricter. That there is a new directive as well, the ECGT, which means that if you make sort of marketing claims, they have to be really substantiated. So it's not law yet, but it's coming, and a lot of companies are now sort of taking that on board because there are long lead times for packaging or whatever it is. So and there are going to be massive fines for the companies that do greenwash. It's comparable to GDPR, so it has to be taken seriously. But
well, I think because as we see with the sustainability reporting, within the next 2 years, almost all companies have to start reporting on it, actually, and both small and big ones. So would you say that starting today with a low threshold for those companies who hasn't started, just by starting with something, would be a way on, attacking this, sustainability sphere?
For sure. I think you can't start too soon, really. Yeah.
Okay, that's very good. Eli, thank you so much. We'll let some Q&As. Anna?
Yes. We have one from Tore, which is awareness of target audience seems to be central for any strategy. How do you advise a small SMB going about this, and how important may this be for the development of your company?
How to identify your audiences, like target your audiences. Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah. He says awareness of target audience seems to be central for any strategy.
Yeah.
How do you advise a small SMB going about this? And how important may this be for the development of the company?
Yeah, I think it's super important. So, I mean, if you want to be relevant in your communications, obviously you've got to be targeted, as we were saying. So, sort of making sure that you are reaching, you know, who is it that you're really trying to target? Is it the financial audience? Is it analysts? Is it other stakeholders? Is it industry, bodies? Is it potential talent? And really having a strategy around that. So, as I said, we in Hexagon Purus, when we're looking at our content, all of our content is targeted to a specific audience, whether it's, a social media post that we're making sure that is, we're very conscious about who that's targeted to. Is that to a financial audience or is it to a prospective employee? So I think just mapping out your stakeholders and then trying to kind of develop content specifically for those audiences is a good starting point. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Another one here. What are some key mistakes to avoid when marketing to a young audience?
I think, greenwashing.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, you've got to be honest about where you are in your journey, and then that creates a lot more trust. If you're trying to say something, present yourself as something you're not, you're really shooting yourself in the foot, because also you might manage to recruit that person, but when they actually get into the company, they're just going to feel as if they've been lied to, frankly, and it's not what they expected, so they probably won't stay with the company anyway. So you have to be true to who you are, and I think the key word here is authenticity, really. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Anyone can ask a question, and then if you want to, I can unmute you, and then you can ask the question yourself. Anybody else? Yeah. Let's see. Nina says, you mentioned humoristic posts. Can a smaller company damage their... She's writing. You mentioned humoristic posts. Can a smaller company damage their reputation if they come up to like that they're too humoristic in a way, or could they damage their reputation or image?
I mean, yes, there is always a risk with communication, right? That you just don't hit the mark. But I think that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. But I think you've just got to be super conscious about what is it that we're trying to achieve, who we're trying to target, and you can also test your content, right? So before you put anything out there, run it past a lot of people and just get a view on does this land well? Does this resonate? What are the bear traps? Have we really thought about how different people might perceive this? So all the communication that we put out, we really, really consider it, because all the words really matter, so nothing just gets sort of published without consideration. We really take time to think about how we frame things, every word that we use. So in that sense, it sounds, quite heavy, but I think it gets easier as you go on. You get a feel and an instinct for what works, right? So I think just try it. As long as you're authentic, you probably won't go too far wrong. As long as you're true to yourself, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one from Hvordan. How do you balance cultural diversity in your target group when you go more personal in your communication, both to reach them and when using humor?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are obviously very significant cultural differences, especially around humor. So if you're a global company, again, I think it comes down to, you know, testing the content, really. I think it's a lot harder in a global company to find something that is going to reach all, you know, if you are global, to find something that's going to be relevant and reach all audiences. So then either you have to be more targeted and just target it towards a specific, you know, a very specific group. But yeah, we did, I mean, Aker Solutions, they managed to make some very funny content, but which was mostly poking fun at the leadership. It was, and you know, they had a group of what they call young solutioneers, which are the kind of under 30 group in the organization, and they made a film with the leaders, which was for Christmas, actually. So it was a kind of end of year funny thing, and they did it very successfully, and it was a series of little skits. And there was kind of something for everyone in it. But I think it's sort of seeing your, I mean, if you have leadership who, you know, are performing well, have trust, and then you can afford to poke a bit of fun, right? So that's something that was very successful in the company. Yeah. But again, it was made by the younger audience, because I mean, sort of generation trying to make something funny for the younger audience is probably not going to land, because I'm not that part of that generation. So I think it's better to have the younger people making that kind of, because they know what's relevant for them. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions, or should we do the final wrap up?
One thing maybe I can just add is that, you know, for the smaller companies that are trying to get more started with communication and struggling with resources, I think it's really worth looking at all the tools out there, like, and especially around AI. There are so many good tools now which can help you with making content. So I would say AI is your friend. It has to be used. You can't just outsource everything. You have to look at as I said, you know, every word counts. But, you know, there are amazing tools now to help you sort of really save time. So I think that's something for smaller companies to think about.
And so for the final, Anna, was another question?
It was just a comment from Hvordan that just said that I see this also as relevant in a multicultural environment, also locally and at all levels in an organization, not only in a global one. So it was just a comment.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
There you go, Eva.
Yes, so Eli, if you would sum up the conversation we've had, I think when we're looking at the SMBs, because you're from Hexagon Purus and Aker Solutions, big companies, but when we look at the small SMBs, what's your greatest and most concrete advice that you can give them in how they can, number one, increase their visibility in the market or position themselves, and also how can they attract this next generation to the companies?
I mean, for those companies, you have to have a digital presence, a solid digital presence. You need to be on social media for sure. I mean, that's almost more important than your website now, because that's where the young generation go. And then, you know, as I said, it's really about communicating your purpose. It's around the why. Why do you exist? You know, what are you here for? And who are you as a company? What is it like to work with you? Why do you make a difference, basically? So I think if you can do that and do it in an authentic way, then you have a much better chance of reaching, you know, the people that you need to come and work with you. So and all it's really, yeah.
Eva,
fantastic.
it was one more question that came there from a student.
Oh, great. Yes.
So I was just thinking, and it's in a way they're turning it a bit around, and they say, Stian says, you have spoken a bit about how companies can successfully reach out to young people and students, but being a student, how do you feel we can, in the best way, reach out to companies seeking connections or collaborations?
Ooh, so how to reach out to companies? You know, I think you had an anecdote about this, Eva Helena, right? That you said, you know, a lot companies are kind of really keen to have students work with them. They're looking for talent, but students aren't necessarily being proactive in contacting companies. And I think, you know, be bold in a way, you know, make the connections, you know, use social media. And I think when you're working in a company and students contact you, it's so refreshing, right? It doesn't happen as much as you would think it might, but I think a lot of companies are very open to having collaborations with students and hearing, you know, getting their expertise, you know, not just, you know, in also more informal ways as well. So yeah, I think be proactive and be bold. Yeah.
I could say from a personal experience, as I studied something that was very practical, and we did a lot of, we reached out to a lot of companies, and it's very easy. Like you get, in a way, so much free from being a student. And the companies like that you are a student. So if you just reach out and say that, hey, we would like to, we have a survey, or we would like to have a workshop and things like that, they love that.
Yeah.
So it's actually being a student, it's just the reaching out part, I think that's you have to do. And then companies are very open to doing like helping out students, really.
Yeah, certainly in all the companies I work with in Norway, you know, we've helped students with their, you know, with their if they're writing a kind of a thesis or something, you know, and providing practical examples. So I think they're very open to that.
And my advice also is getting students onto LinkedIn, you know, because that's where the business part of it happens. So all the other social media channels some companies have, but it's actually not the typical SMB industrial companies have these social media channels to where you can search, you know, which company has a position at a summer vacation job or whatever. So I would strongly suggest that you start building your resume now and connecting on LinkedIn. And then also as I mentioned, most small industrial companies are not on social media. They need to be now in order for us to meet each other, right? So that's the challenge. That's what we're kind of saying. This is the proof of this, you know, discussion. The students don't know how to find these companies, and the companies don't know how to find the students. So this is the perfect, yeah, it is. So by that, I think it's actually 08:45, so we're spot on time. It's Eli, it's been an absolute pleasure having you this morning, and we've gained so much insight and inspiration. And I hope that all of the people who has been watching brings this inspiration into the weekend and starts applying by Monday. So
great.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining, og husk å bli med oss på vår neste digitale kaffe. Det den første i hver måned. Så det bare å følge med og hive dere på, så vi alltid noe spennende å komme med og relevant. Så det bare å melde seg på. Tusen takk alle sammen, og vi ønsker alle sammen en fantastisk inntreden til fredag og en nydelig helg.
Ha det bra.
Ha det bra. Ha det.